What's up, Tweeners? Welcome back to another Tweener Tennis video today here on the channel. And today we have a very special interview for you guys. We have Damian Kust, who has been on the channel before to talk about the Challenger Tour, but we wanted to have him on to kind of recap the 2022 ATP Challenger Tour season. It was a lot of fun getting to talk to him. He has a lot of good insight. Damian has a great eye for talent and picking those that are going to make it on the ATP Tour level and talking about who did the best, who maybe was a little disappointing but still did well, who were we expecting to see make a splash on the ATP Tour next year, and much more with that. Now, I hope you guys do enjoy this interview with him, and please go show him some love on Twitter. Make sure to follow him. He has his own podcast recapping Challenger events as well, so we can't wait to see and learn from him even more next year. But before you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and would love to have you guys join the channel. So make sure you hit that sub with notifications turned on, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Now, enjoy our conversation with Damian. So, Damian, thank you for joining me on my Antarctica adventure, obviously, because I'm recording this video outside. But thank you again for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about the ATP Challenger Tour, something that you are very familiar with. And to kind of start off this conversation is, what did you think of the Challenger Tour overall this past year in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the busiest so far.
Mm-hmm.
184 events, which is a new record. I
Yeah,
can't remember how many there were in 2021, but I think it upped it by like 30
it
or
was.
something like that, which is crazy.
It's definitely. It was less than 150.
140 something, right?
Yeah.
147. Yeah,
Yes.
so it's 37 events more, and you could feel it, especially in the second half of the year. It felt like pretty much every single event had every single week had 5 events in it. A couple even had 6. Sometimes, Challenger Tennis was just 24/7,
Yeah.
because you could literally, I don't know, you have to sleep at some points of the day, so you couldn't really watch it 24/7. But if
Hmm.
you, let's say, if you tried, you could start with Japan, go to at the same time, I think some Australian challengers as well were played, and then Europe, then the States, then South America, and
Yeah.
you'd pretty much have it all. And that was crazy. I think the second half of the year especially, and now it's gonna be even bigger because one thing that I think we need to mention in this video is that the ATP announced these enhancements
Yeah.
they call it, for the ATP Challenger Tour in 2023. Of course, the big thing is the prize money, which is
Hmm.
supposed to go up 60% from 2022 to 21 million, which
Hmm.
is quite sick. There's a lot of like smaller, developments in that the categories of
Yeah.
challenger events are going to be different. There's no 90s or 110s anymore, which basically weren't held since the pandemic anyway. I think there was
Yes.
one 110 in Seoul this year, or in
Yes.
Busan, one of these South Korean
I
ones.
think it was Korea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely Korea. One of the South Korean events. I think Busan was 125, so Seoul was 110. There were a bit, some 90s, but the ATP feel like they need to simplify it. They feel like they need to just make it clearer, which I like. There's
Hmm.
gonna be Challenger 175 events. This is connected to the ATP calendar that includes more second week, more 2-week Masters 1000 events. So during the second weeks of Indian Wells, Rome, and Madrid, we're gonna have Challenger 175 events, which still are. We still don't know which events these are going to be. I'm assuming that the one during Indian Wells will be Phoenix, because that was always
Yeah.
always that in 2019 and in 2022, that was the event that happened during the second week of Indian Wells. It had a sick
Hmm.
field every single
Yeah.
time. This year we had the doubles number 1 and number 2 play Phoenix. Even Mektic
Yeah.
and Pavic, they didn't even win the event. They were in the semis. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because the ATP claims that there's going to be 195 Challenger Tour events in 2023. We'll see if that's if that's going to be doable, because already I think Columbus was cancelled in January
Yep.
with the fine that the ATP got over the LTA
Yeah.
for the Wimbledon scenario. At
Which
the
is
LTA also said that like they wanted to hold some challengers in the first 3 months, but they aren't gonna be able to do that now. So perhaps it's not gonna be a full 195. We'll see, but yeah, it's still something pretty crazy. And there's also gonna be more. A 170% increase in total numbers of Challenger
yes.
100 and 125 events.
Hmm.
Because it kind of felt like most definitely the majority of ATP Challenger Tour events were 80s anyway, and now there's going to be even more points, which kind of blends the tours as well. I think I believe that it's going to be a bit easier for Challenger guys to get to the top 100 with a couple of good results to
Hmm.
get to the main tour. So yeah, a lot of excitement coming, a lot of work for these 5 people in the world who are dedicated to cover the Challenger Tour. And, and
No,
yeah,
it's true though, because if we think about it, and I hate to say this, but somehow I can't see you right now. I can only see your
oh,
name. It's okay. There you go.
I don't know. I don't
Perfect.
know what happened.
That's okay. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because during one of our goals back in 2020, right before COVID hit, was to go to Phoenix, and looking at that field, and kind of, I'm glad you brought that up, because looking at the field and looking at these smaller challenger events that are now going to become small 250s, I think it allows players to not only travel a little bit closer to the event that they originally played, but it's not putting pressure on, I would say, the ATP Tour, even though this is their responsibility. It doesn't put the pressure of putting on a full event, but still gives players the ability to get prize money at a more consistent basis. And with these bigger tournaments, and I don't think also it's through the Masters 1000s. I think it's during the second week of Grand Slams. And correct me if I'm wrong with that, but I think we're going to be seeing more bigger challengers after Grand Slams,
I
which
mean, usually we get them anyway, I think. Last year during the second week of Wimbledon, we definitely had two 125s in
mhm,
Salzburg and Braunschweig. During the second week of Roland Garros, there was Nottingham already on
yeah,
grass, and I think even another 125 in Forli.
mhm,
Can't remember the second week of the US Open right now, but yeah, there's not. I just said about the second weeks of Masters events, because that's where the 175s are going to be. But
yeah,
yeah, the second week of Slams is definitely the another like huge huge
yeah,
thing for challenger events. It's kind of been like that for years as well. I think Prosteov used to be held as a 125 even in the
mhm,
2000s as during the second week of Roland Garros, and it would get like Thomas
yeah,
Berdych playing when he was
yeah.
13 in the world or something.
It,
So
it,
it's been like that for a while now, but yeah, that's definitely a huge moment every time for the Challenger Tour when in the second week of slams the guys who have already lost can attend.
I agree, and it while it's more common, and I think we talked about it at least on our channel, and I should have reached out to you for this, is the idea of, will 2023 be the year that we're actually going to see not less complaints, but a more consistent basis of players being okay with how the Challenger Tour is being run with the increase in prize money? Do you think in 2023 we're going to see that from players, or have a better reaction from players moving forward? Or do you think this is just a small step that the ATP is moving towards?
No, we kind of need to see the whole thing. For now we only know the calendar until February.
Hmm.
So we haven't really seen how it works.
Hmm.
Especially we only saw the calendar, we haven't seen it running.
Yeah.
But there are some great ideas here for sure. More prize money is always great. The ATP also said something about optimizing the calendar, which is kind of ambiguous. You don't really
Very.
get much out of it. But I
Yeah.
think even in the February calendar, we already saw something like that, because in 2020 there was this new event established in Manama in Bahrain,
Yeah.
And basically it was a terrible date for this tournament. I think
Hmm.
Ramkumar Ramanathan won it, but generally the field was quite subpar.
Hmm.
Because players simply didn't really have that much of a incentive to go to Bahrain and then travel to someplace else.
Yeah.
But in the February calendar, I think the Manama is now a bigger event. First of all, 125, and then straight up after that, you've got 3 consecutive challengers in India.
Hmm.
I think in a couple of there's been already in the February calendar we can see a few American challengers, which I think are nicely placed around Delray Beach and Dallas.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of what they meant. I believe all players, most of the players should be very happy about that. My podcast co-host Jakub, I don't know if he's gonna watch this, but
Let's hope.
yeah, he did this thing in Bratislava, which was a challenger in November. We both attended, where he was asking every player he talked to about the Challenger Tour changes, like what's their opinion on them. I think the most popular answers ranged from I want to see how it works first to
Yeah.
it's a step for the in the good direction. I don't think there was anyone who was criticizing anything because there's not much to criticize. These are
Yeah.
all just good things. We'll see how they work in reality, but on paper they're pretty amazing. And yeah, I think it's gonna be good times for the challenger players, especially with the 60% prize money increase, because that's probably the biggest deal. Right now, it's really the life of a tennis player is a bit like, are you getting into Grand Slam qualifying? If you're getting into Grand Slam qualifying, then you're
You're
probably
okay.
fine. Yeah,
Yes.
and this should allow more players to be okay, even if they don't. So that's always good.
Which is the hardest thing too, because it's not people think it's the most glamorous lifestyle. And when we first started talking about this kind of stuff, for me at least, you would always think of what goes into the back end of the players that are still grinding on the Challenger ITF tour. But in reality, it's a very slim margin when it comes to making that living. So yes, the 60% prize money increase is going to make a huge factor, even though that's basically going down now after the LTA was fined that $1 million from the ATP Tour, which is not the most ideal, but it's going to be limiting their ability to host challengers and smaller tournaments for players, not just around Wimbledon, but throughout the year. And to kind of segue into our conversation about some of the players this past year, who was who was the most impressive player that you saw on the Challenger Tour? And I'm throwing you right into it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you have your notes up. Who was one person that you thought was very impressive that's gonna make a big splash on the main tour next year?
Okay. Well, there is a player who's already making a big splash, and there is a player who will make a big splash, I believe.
Okay,
So I
I
will
like it.
give 2 answers for this one.
Perfect. I love it.
Uh, First of all, I mean, Jack Draper had a sick
Yeah.
3 or 4 months to start the year. 4 titles, all until like the beginning of April. He only
Mhm.
played 28 matches on the Challenger Tour this year, 24-4 win-loss record.
Huge.
Which even that's some of these losses were included like physical issues.
Yeah.
There was this one in on grass to Peniston where he was struggling. There was another one to Goyo when he was coming off a title. It could have been even crazier. Of course, Draper isn't really like in the player of the year for Challenger Tour conversation because he was
Yeah.
only there for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, he was there for 3 months and a week, and then he also played a challenger on grass and lost in the second round. So he's already there, of course, but that
Yeah.
was a pretty crazy rise, and I think we kind of tend to forget like how much of a jump Draper made in the off
Hmm.
season between 2021 and 2022 because he
That's
was
true.
really just a shell of a player in
Yeah.
November 2021. You could see he has the weapons, but he had zero control over his ground strokes, and he
Hmm.
comes back after the off season, and he's like, rally tolerance is so much better. The return, he's not really playing like we imagined he would. He's not a cannon just shooting that lefty serve and blasting every ball. He's
not a teenager anymore. It's a grown adult.
He's not a one-dimensional player anymore. And you couldn't really predict that he was going to do that in just 1 month of an off season. I mean, I want to know what they did. I think all players want to know what they did. But of course he had some potential. We always knew he had some potential, but the jump he did was crazy. And because he was so successful in the first 3 months, he didn't get to play on the Challenger Tour much longer, and I don't think we're going to see him on the Challenger Tour like ever, probably.
Yes, it's true, because he's already made that leap and he's already made that transition too. And I forget, and you might be able to answer this, was he in the ATP Next Gen finals last year?
I don't think so, because he was at like 200 and something in the ATP rankings. So definitely not, in fact.
Okay.
And that's exactly like the extent of how much of a jump that was. That one off season where he was just a player with potential, and then he comes out. He finished 265 was where he finished 2021. So that just demonstrates how insane that was, because he only made the top 100 in like what was it, June? Oh, I forgot that in May he also played the Challenger on clay, but that doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
After the first 3 months, he was basically never never really played the challengers with any consistency anymore. He was just a main tour guy, and of course with some players, with some the scale of potential is so high that we kind of know that if something doesn't go horribly wrong, like an injury, he's probably not going to be there for much longer.
Absolutely. And who was the second person that you thought that played more consistently on the Challenger Tour?
Played more consistently only in the second half of the year, and I think you know who I'm talking about.
Do I?
Ben Shelton.
Oh God.
Yeah,
it's true though. He was one of the guys that, and he is a really, really nice guy. He has so much potential. He has everyone behind him. Seeing him go on that Challenger run in the US, where what was it, 3 straight in a row? 2 definitely, 2 in a row, I know for sure, after he beat three. But 2 of them he beat Eubanks back to back.
Yeah.
And so seeing him go from that level to basically playing in college to then going pro after the US Open, like that to me says a lot just about his physicality and mental toughness, because you don't really see that in some of the college guys coming out of that mentality and having that much backup. But Ben was able to do it to a scale that was too quick to believe. It was too quick.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, last year he only had 2 Challenger appearances, 1 quarterfinal in Champaign. And of course, like most collegians, he only started his pro season in June this year. And since then he's gone to the top 100, which really tells you all you need to know, right? I mean, the 3 weeks you mentioned, it's not that uncommon on the Challenger Tour to win free titles in 3 consecutive weeks. Like in 2021, we had 2 players do that, Talon Grigspor and Benjamin Bonzi. But Shelton is the youngest player to ever do that. So that's quite an achievement as well. As you said, it was pretty insane because while some of the American challengers maybe don't have the depth that Europe has a lot of the time, the stars in the events are pretty much just as good, right? And as you said, he played Eubanks twice. He was in the second event that he won, he was basically in at some point struggling physically, and in the third, how was he pulling that off? I don't know. He had the semi against Kovacevic where he just
that was
25
incredible.
aces, 25 aces, I think. And then against Vukic in the final, he was 0-6 down. I just kept thinking, when is he going to retire? And yet he's, suddenly
He
turns it
wins.
on and comes, and he comes back. Doesn't even give Vukic much of a chance in the latter two sets, I think, after saving some break points at the beginning of the second. This was insane, definitely. To just, to start your season in June, get to the top 100 is already crazy enough. To do it as that much of a newcomer, where he only had a couple of challenger events. Of course, he had this great showing at US Open qualies. Of course, he had the NCAA title. But it's super rare to just go from that. And you mentioned the maturity, which was definitely a big change in Shelton's game between 2021 and 2022. Maybe sort of similarly to Draper in a way. In 2021, he was that explosive lefty game, but we didn't really know how this was going to be shaped. It was just unpolished. But a year came. Maybe he just got that good of a training from his father at Florida. I don't know, but it was such a for someone like me who doesn't watch college tennis like at all almost, to see him probably for the last time in 2021 in Champaign in November, and then for the next time at the beginning of June 2022, the difference was just night and day. And soon it showed. Of course, it wouldn't be such a legendary challenger season if not for these 3 titles that he got at the end of his campaign. But he got them, and he made the top 100, won the Australian Open Wildcard Challenge, which he won't even need. And
that's going to Chris Eubanks, by the way, instead of Ben, because Ben's he qualified within a 3-month span. He qualified for the Australian Open without the help of a wild card, which is, again, something you rarely see in the modern game, at least for that kind of level. And for you too, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is who was one player that you thought at the beginning of this year that was going to do super well or make that transition, but got stuck on the Challenger Tour level? Who was that one player that you think really, and I use this in my ATP awards, the one player that gave you hope but crushed your spirits?
I think you could probably come up with a couple, but was there someone who I thought that would take it to the top 100 and didn't? I'm not sure. I think most of the prospects whom we thought they were going to start playing on the main tour, they probably did. There's definitely a couple of guys who I thought were going to start contending for titles, and they kind of didn't. One is definitely Arthur Fields, the 18-year-old Frenchman who the whole year it's kind of felt like he has the level. He just in big moments, whenever he plays someone, like he had this beautiful match, for example, against Federico Coria, where he was 5-0 up in the second set. I think it was a French challenger in the summer. And maybe Trois or Blois, one of these. No, never mind. It doesn't really matter. But generally, when in February he had a great match against Quentin Alice, served for it, didn't take it, and it just feels like while his game has definitely somewhat improved, the mentality is holding him back. And I just thought that maybe at the end of the year, he was gonna be the Luka Van Asch. Because they played, I think, the Roland Garros 2021 boys singles final against each other. Van Asch,
I remember that.
Won it. Van Asch definitely won it. There were 4 Frenchmen in the semis with Pechi Pericard and Quenel, and I think it was Fields in the final. And just looking at them both, it felt like Fields was the much better prospect. The explosive forehand, the athleticity as well. Athleticism, of course. Van Asch is very light, very lightly built, somewhat underpowered still, even though he's getting more comfortable on the offense. And it just always felt like but perhaps right now Van Asch is better, but of course in a year or two it's going to be much different. And it's not.
True.
It's actually for now it's not, and that was kind of disappointing to me about Fields. Maybe at a lesser extent. I mean, Phil still made 5 Challenger quarterfinals, which at 18 is, of course, a very fine
Very impressive.
score.
Still impressive. Still
Yeah,
very impressive. It's not
just, my expectations weren't fulfilled, but I'm not
no.
losing hope.
Yeah,
Although I
absolutely.
have to say that some doubt currently is in my mind. He did qualify for the Paris ATP Masters 1000, right, beating
He
Munar and
did,
Fonini, which was
which
probably
was very impressive.
probably the best like single result he had all year, I think. Kind of hard to compare with challengers, but like how do you
But
compare
still,
qualifying for a Masters 1000 to a challenger event? Like, what's the similar result? But I think this was probably the best result he got all year. There were a couple other guys, like, I don't know, I thought Nicolas Alvarez Varona was gonna do much more. He had a final at the end of December 2021 in Rio against
yeah.
Uchida, and it just seemed like the game is all there. Pretty underrated serve. He can play on both hard and clay. The flat backhand maybe isn't like his strongest shot, but it's super
Hmm.
unpleasant to face. He
Hmm.
had his moments as well. There
Yeah.
was this great match in Hong, where
Yeah.
he played Tommy Paul. Yeah, but on the Challenger Tour, it just felt like soon enough this guy has to make finals or win titles. And I might be lying here, but I don't think he made a single final all year. Someone else I thought was gonna do much better was Jonas Foreitek, the former junior world number one, who in the juniors his biggest weakness by far was the forehand, which was super clumsy, technically very flawed.
Hmm.
And now he's improved it to a point where I feel like he can't really his shot selection has gotten very spotty because it's so powerful that he just wants
Yeah.
to finish every ball with it. But
Oh yeah.
I think he was also held back by some injuries, because he had this pretty much he had a good spell in the spring, and
Hmm.
then retired in a semi in Heilbronn against who was it, Andre Martin, I think. And
Yeah.
since then it was never really the same. So ranking wise he hasn't really made any big progress. I think Foreitek and Fields are actually in like very similar ranking spots. Probably Fields a little higher because he's like on the verge of making the Australian Open qualies.
Hmm.
Alvarez Varona has probably like what, broken the top 200 or something like that, or maybe
Yeah.
just behind the top 200. But still, yeah, these were the guys I thought. Or actually, yeah, looking at it, he's 239 at the moment, or 238 officially, 239 live.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all at like
The
slam
similar.
qualities, maybe slam qualities, but yeah, I just thought that perhaps all of them should be like firmly into the top 200 this year. I'm not sure if there was like any someone comparable to Draper, maybe, where we thought
Hmm.
that the talent was so huge and he hasn't made the jump. I'm not sure there was anyone like that, honestly. Maybe Striker, but he still made
That's
serious progress. So
and
yeah.
that's one guy too that I have thought about too, and Zizou Bergs as well. Those
Yeah.
two names, those two names come to mind where I know, like, that's for me a household name that I thought I'd be saying on the ATP tour level more consistently, and it just always seemed to not give me that same expectation. I still think 2023 is going to be a much better year for them, and I would love to talk to them both about what's happening in their careers, because both of them have the backing of their country. Both of them have great young careers so far. But this past year, Zizou got hit with a couple injuries. Stricker, same thing. And Dominic is playing in Saudi Arabia right now with some of the top guys in the world for an exhibition. So, and personally, I'm not really counting that as a thing to watch to get an idea of how they're going to play in 2023, obviously. Um, but it is a conversation where I've had not just with myself, but I think this is the first time I've talked to you about it with those two characters about what they can do moving forward, and at least seeing them progress in that 2023 season. And my last question for you, Damian, and I really do appreciate you being on here with me. It's a lot of fun always chatting to you about Challenger Tours. Not many people know as much as you do, so it's a lot of fun to kind of get this insight. The amount of Italians that are in no, it's funny
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the amount of Italians that are in the top 250 right now is quite astonishing. And I was wondering, out of all of those, because we saw that with Maestrelli in the Firenze Open, we saw that with Arnaldi, we've seen that with Cobolli, we've seen it with a lot, even Matteo Gigante that we spoke to earlier this year, who also got hit with injuries. A lot of these guys are probably going to break into the top 100 soon. So I wanted to hear your opinion on some of these guys and what you think they're going to do or what their potential is like.
Mhm. Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, the amount of these young Italians, and it's kind of funny because, one of them shows up on the tour, you watch him and you're like, okay, this one perhaps isn't going to do that much. And then 3 months later, he's just, so much better, suddenly playing a completely different style, suddenly improved so much. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of that comes down to how many opportunities they're getting.
Yeah.
I think Italy hosted, I can actually check it quickly, but I think it's 28. Yeah, it's
Challengers?
28 challengers this year. Yeah.
Jeez.
The
That's a
States had
lot.
21 and France had 18.
That's incredible.
I believe it's the second or even third year in a row when Italy has the most challenger events. They've definitely dedicated a lot of resources to this, and I think it's paying off. Some of these examples, like Luca Nardi, I believe last year
Yes.
had 15 challenger wildcards in 2021. I mean, and
Yeah.
only one of them like turned into something. He had a semifinal in December, I believe.
Yeah.
And then that all works towards his progress some way, even though I remember it being like a point of discussion at in the middle of 2021 whether he wouldn't be better off actually playing some ITFs, playing guys that are at his level. He, similarly to Draper, actually made super progress in the 2021-2022 of season,
Yeah.
especially on his serve. He suddenly became such a force indoors. Of course, Nardi is always looked at as one of these big prospects coming from all these next gen Italians, because in the juniors he was like just as good as Alcaraz, Rune. Perhaps
Yeah.
not even at because neither of these guys really did much at like ITF juniors, but like in the competitions before that,
Yeah.
under 16s they were dominating European events. He is generally regarded as one of like the very the most naturally talented players. Up until a couple of years back, he wasn't really sure if he was gonna commit to tennis fully,
Really?
which yeah, he made it at some point, and it's clearly working. But there are some concerns with me. Like I'm not sure if he's gonna be I don't know, a top 10 player or something like that. I'm not sure if he can develop as well as Alcaraz and Rune are right now in pro tennis, because there's
Yeah.
just not much he does like in terms of an exceptional weapon, a big one shot that's going to gain him points. I think it's been pretty clear this year that going forward he's actually going to do better on faster surfaces, because he
Mm-hmm.
he likes being aggressive, but without that much power it's kind of hard to do that on clay. He had this fantastic match with Tsitsipas, right, in Nur Sultan or Astana right now. I think they changed
Yeah.
the name again, so Astana, which was very reassuring towards like his progress. But
Mm-hmm.
when I think about if he can do what Alcaraz and Rune are doing right now, it's probably going to require a bit of a revamp of his game. But of course, this is a guy who will break the top 100 at some point. Someone
Yeah.
who just completely, caught us out of nowhere was Francesco Passaro, whom from 2021, I just remembered him as basically a grinder that had nothing. Like he was only able to defend. I remember this match against Popco in a Italian challenger in the summer. Of course, I'm not going to remember the name because
Of
they have
course.
25
28.
Italian challengers. Yeah, 28 this year, and I was talking about 2021, so I can't remember, but it was also 20 something, of course.
Of
And yeah,
course.
he played Dimitri Popko in the summer, and he lost in 3 sets. It was pretty it was fun to watch, but it was pretty clear that at least watching it back then, that this guy is not gonna do much. Of course, he's just a grinder. He does nothing
Yeah.
with the ball. And then he comes this summer, this spring even, he shows up and
Mhm.
suddenly he has this insane power in his forehand where, you know, he was just ball bashing through the whole summer basically. It sort of died down later, but he had such this absolutely absurd spell of playing
Yeah.
ultra powerful tennis on clay, which was, you know, I couldn't believe that I'm watching the same guy who lost to Popko in 2021. And he just like I mentioned with Foretek a couple minutes ago, he even had issues controlling that power.
Yeah.
You know, the shot selection definitely could be improved still, but Passaro I think also has a good chance of like staying in the top 100 for a good bit. And he's already shown that even on other surfaces he's faring nicely. In Florence, which you just mentioned, he beat Zhang in the opening round. He played very well at the next gen finals, even though not making it out of the groups. But I think both him and Arnaldi, of course, they played like a 5-setter there.
Yeah.
Both of them actually showed that that they can play outside of clay as well. Arnaldi's service, you know, jumping sort of to Arnaldi's service turning out to be very you know, so much more dangerous than we thought
Yeah.
when looking at him on clay, which
Mhm.
indoors, outdoors, it's been a big factor. Arnaldi has been more of a, you know, I think he's like sixth in terms of the number of challenger events played this year. So
Wow.
you know, he's got so many wins, like 38, which is the third score, I believe, but also 25 losses. But still, it's a very good record. And this is also a guy whom, you know, before last year we wouldn't really be thinking of. I really appreciate how much he's like willing to learn, even though, you know, his basis sort of was how he grew, how he got higher in the rankings was more the defensive abilities. He was
Mhm.
like never really afraid of trying new things, even though the control over his aggressive shots wasn't really there. And I think it's already paying off as well. Yeah, both of these guys performed admirably at the next gen finals, even though not making it out. And that's a super fast indoor hardcourt. I think one more guy that, yeah, you mentioned Maestrelli as well, of course. I think one more guy that definitely deserves a mention is Mattia Berrucci, who had this great spell of you know, winning back-to-back titles, back-to-back challenger titles on first on outdoor hard and then indoor hard this autumn. And the thing with him is that you know, he had this phenomenal rise from the ITF tour, but it was mostly on outdoor hard courts, and also I think he also had one event, one title on indoors. And
Mhm.
but in the summer we all watched him on clay in the Italian challengers, and I think we all just kind of forgot, you know, we assumed that he's a clay courter.
Yeah.
And it turned out that, you know, even at the beginning of the year, apparently he was saying that he's still learning to play on clay, and it makes a lot of sense because he also has this like pretty aggressive game, but not that much power. It just helps him stay on top of the point. He's got so
Mhm.
much variety, like 200 different game plans, honestly. The combo of his drop shot and backhand lob down the line, I think, can be absolutely legendary if he ever gets to the main. I think he's even overplaying it a bit. Like I've already seen opponents, you know, get ready for it. Like whenever they have a drop shot and they play to his backhand, they're already coming back. Chemilka did that very well in the Vilnius final against him. But this guy is very good to watch because he just you never know what you're gonna get. There's just so much variety. He is apparently also, like, you know, I talked to him for like 3 minutes, so I can't really be the person you know, giving the best outlook on that. But from many other Italians, I've also heard that he's super intelligent.
Mhm.
And I think even in his second language, it kind of showed that he has this very high level of thinking about his game.
Mhm.
Perhaps it's also, you know, not that easy to progress through the rankings with that, because you get so many different thoughts in your brain. And, but yeah, you never really know what you're gonna get with him. The game plans are many and they're very unpredictable. So that's someone that I really wish to, you know, that he's gonna keep this run going. And it was it was so fun to just suddenly discover that, you know, he this is not a clay guy at all, but he's
Yeah.
actually He's
It's all
actually
a hard
so
court.
much better. Yeah, he's actually so much better in outdoor hard courts, and also a very underrated serve like Arnaldi. Definitely not powerful. He's not tall or anything, but the angles he gets, on indoor hard court matches, he was constantly getting like 80%, over 80% on first serve points won. And we mentioned disappointments, and I just pulled out the list of the Italians ranked in the top 250. It's 20 right now, but also you've got Gigante, whom you mentioned, just behind this list. But there's also Cobolli and Zapieri, who I think sort of would fit the Stricker and Bergs mold, where last year we thought that they were, the prime Italian talents.
Cobolli, especially for me, at least, with the amount of hype that he got with talking about Roma, being included in these conversations. I remember the Rome Open as well. I believe he got a wild card. Like that to me also, I want to see him evolve into the player that we know he can be. But whether or not he does that, it's a whole nother story.
Yeah, Zapieri, everyone thinks of him as that he had a good season, I think, because of the UMAG semifinals. But it was like his only good result of
only
the year.
Good result, yeah.
Yeah, there was also a Roland Garros qualifying. He made it through Roland Garros qualies, but it was a very easy section. Seppi, Quenel in the final qualifying round, and someone else, I think, maybe Copil, I'm not sure, in the opening round. Copil might not be true.
That's okay.
But because of these two events, I think that's why people are sort of looking at Zapieri, like, can he break through in a second? But he just hasn't really produced at the challenger level. He hasn't produced anything, even compared to his 2021 season. Cobolli, I think I'm more excited about Cobolli. He's definitely he's so wild, like, mentally. Sometimes tennis is just so easy for him. You see this with guys like, I don't know, Stricker as well, for example, that they just, and sometimes they just enter the court and they just blast every ball, everything is coming in. But there's also times when Cobolli just looks so sloppy and everything. And compared to his 2021 progress and where we thought he would be, I think his season was a disappointment as well. Yeah. And this is just pretty interesting, and like the whole discussion about the Italians, where after 2021, if you asked about the best Italian talents, of course some would probably mention Nardi, although I'm not sure if most people would, because he had 15 challenger wildcards and basically did next to nothing with them.
Exactly.
But the main topic would definitely be Zapieri and Cobolli. And now if you ask someone the same question, it's going to be Maestrelli, it's going to be Passaro, it's going to be Arnaldi, it's going to be Nardi, it's going to be Bellucci, and then maybe you're going to get to Cobolli and Zapieri, which is, it shows two things. Yeah, it's ironic. It shows two things: that these guys really underwhelmed in 2022, and that so many young, talented Italians emerged. I had this Twitter space with an Italian guy on Twitter. I think the name is Telegrammi di Tennis.
Yeah.
Who like did a Twitter space with me on the young Italians. He was just he wanted to get someone from abroad, someone else's perspective. And according to him, Zapieri was actually like highly regarded in Italy. I don't know. We'll see. But the only thing I can say is that he had two good events this year, and that's why it's pretty disappointing.
I agree, and Damian, I love this conversation. There's so much to take away from it. If you guys want to listen to Damian talk about Challenger tours all the time, he is now linked to Cracked Rackets. Is that correct?
Yeah.
He's now doing his own podcast there, associated with Cracked Rackets and Gruskin. Just follow this guy on Twitter. Listening to Damian talk about any Challenger event and anything, go follow him. You'll know who's coming up on the tour in any way, shape, or form. And Damian, I am freezing. So I really do appreciate you doing this with me, and I'll see you soon. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks, guys.